Hi everyone, this is my Web Tools final project. A little background information. I am a graduate assistant in athletic administration and compliance at Western Oregon, and I work for the Associate Athletic Director of Compliance. And every day I work with student athletes, coaches, athletic staff, and occasionally university staff. And we make sure that everyone is aware and follows and is compliant to the rules and regulation of the NCAA, Western Oregon, and the Great Northwest Athletic Conference in which we participate in. And for my unit of instruction, I decided to focus on eligibility rules. There's a lot of aspects that goes into compliance, but I decided to focus on eligibility. So my first lesson would be geared towards student athletes, and it would be the student athlete compliance meeting. So this is an annual meeting that happens before every team's first official practice. So we meet with each individual team and we cover NCAA rules, Western Oregon rules, and GNAC rules and regulation. And this is the time where we go over really important information and we sign documents for the NCAA. And it's just really important that we get this information to all student athletes so they can understand what makes them eligible, what could not make them eligible, and how to just keep themselves eligible and successful as both students and athletes. Now, it's also really important that we make this meeting engaging and interactive because, like I said, it's an annual meeting, and by the time you're a senior, you've heard this meeting and these rules 4 to 5 times. So we want to make sure that they're engaged. So for this meeting, our web tools we would use would be a keynote presentation. We would make sure that it looks nice and clean, it's pretty to your eyes, not too much information on each slide, and that's really easy for everyone to just look at. And then to also make it interactive, I would use a ThingLink interactive photo. And in this circumstance, I would make a ThingLink of the Western Oregon campus and highlight the areas on campus that are really great support areas for our student athletes. So like the new PE building where the compliance officers building offices, financial aid, the Student Success Center, admissions, and the Health and Counseling Center, so that they can see that there's a whole bunch of areas of support for them all over campus, not just in the athletic department. And then I would also use Quizlet. Quizlet has really great tools of how to test your knowledge once you've created a set of flashcards. So in this case, I would create a set of flashcards with compliance terms and scenarios that student athletes really need to grasp and understand, and kind of make it a competitive game since student athletes love to compete, and kind of challenge them. So I'd split a team in half and kind of quiz them and make it a game of how, like, test their knowledge. And then when student athletes get a question wrong or they don't understand, that's a really good time to ask questions and clarify any misunderstandings. Now, some of the other lessons will be geared towards eligibility for coaches. It's important for both players and coaches to understand, but the next few topics are really, really geared towards coaches so that they can understand and really support their students and keep them eligible. So the first eligibility lesson would be academics. So there are a lot of requirements for academics for our student athletes. There's a set of requirements for once the student is in college, and there's also a set of requirements for when they are a high school senior about to transition into college. For high school students, the NCAA really wants to make sure that our student athletes coming into college are ready for college and can be successful and they have the tools and knowledge to be successful. So high school students are required to complete 16 core courses. So that's 4 years of English, math, 3 years of science, 2 years of social science, and a couple electives. And it's really important when recruiting, coaches understand that their student athletes will have successfully completed their 16 core courses, or they're on track to complete their 16 core courses, because if high school students don't have their core courses completed, they will not be eligible in their first year of college. So to really make sure that coaches are grasping this knowledge, I would again create a keynote presentation. I would use the same ThingLink interactive photo of the WU campus resources so that coaches can be prepared and ready to point students in the right direction and let them know that there are other areas on campus that are supported in. But then I would also create a screencast. I would use the compliance officer and create a screencast of her going through a high school transcript of one high school senior who has or is on track of completing their 16 core courses so they can see a transcript of someone who's ready for college. and then them going over another transcript of a high school student who is not all the way there or not on track of completing their 16 core courses, so they can see what a transcript of someone who's not ready looks like, and they can compare the two so that when they are recruiting and they have received transcripts, they can kind of see who's ready and who's not. My second eligibility lesson would be for transfer students. There are various types of transfer students, and there are different requirements for different types of transfers. There are transfers that go from a 2-year college to a 4-year to another 4-year, or a 4-year to a 2-year. So there's just a lot of different rules. So the web tool I would use to have a resource for our coaches would be eLink, and it would just be a newsletter of curated sources that really just point coaches in the right direction for each type of transfer. So it would be a list of curated links that have descriptions for what each link is. So one link could be a 4-year to 4-year transfer. They can click right there, have a whole list of questions and answers ready for them to look at. Or another link of 2-year to 4-year, another link of a 4 to 2-year. Just a whole bunch of curated links so that coaches don't have to go on and search. They can look there and get their questions answered before having to do a whole bunch of extra work and blindly search. They can go right to the knowledge. And then if they can't find something there, they can then go to the compliance officer. But the e-link is a great way for them to just knock out and go exactly to where they needed to find an answer to. My third lesson would be on amateurism. So all student athletes must be amateurs in order to compete and be eligible. So the web tools I would use for this I would create a video to send to coaches, so that would really just kind of describe what exactly amateurism is and how to make sure that their student athletes are exactly amateurs for when they both recruit, and then their own student athletes for over the summer when they're off doing their own thing, so that they can really drill into their student athletes like what they can and cannot do in order to keep their amateurism. And then again, I would also use eLink and have a newsletter of curated sources based on just amateurism itself. So like I said again, they can find a description of a link that takes them right to the question they need in different sources. And then finally, I would be a lesson on helping coaches study for the compliance test. So every year, coaches, assistant coaches, and graduate assistant coaches must take what is called a recruiting test. So it's a compliance test, and it just makes sure that coaches and assistants are aware and up to date with all the rules and regulations of the NCAA, so that they aren't doing anything incorrectly, and then they're making sure that everyone is on the right track of staying eligible, and that they're making sure that the safety and the well-being of the student athletes are really cared for. So web tools I would use in this circumstance would be in Nearpod. So our compliance director can upload on Nearpod all of the different lessons she has created and make interactive quizzes, fill in the blank questions. So there are practices for our coaches, because coaches love to be prepared before their test. So this is a great tool for them to study and just go over everything that they've learned. And they can access it anywhere on any type of device, cell phone, tablets, computers. So while they're out recruiting, or while they're at home or in their office or at practice, if they want to just kind of review something before their compliance test, they have the opportunity to. And then finally, I would also again use a screencast and create a screencast of exactly how to go onto their NCAA portal and access the test, because sometimes coaches have had trouble in the past of figuring out exactly how to get there in time for when the test opens, so that way there's no excuses, and that there's an exact way to show them how to do it and how to access their test correctly. Thank you for listening to my unit of instruction for my Web Tools final project.